welcome to today's tutorial. So I'm Lucy and I'm here today to show you how to make some bunting. So let's get started. What you'll need in this tutorial is pretty simple. You can basically use any sort of fabric for bunting, but today I'm going to be using cotton fabric. You can use polycotton, you can use calico, or you could use upholstery fabric if you want something a little bit tougher. But for today I've just been to the shop and grabbed some tie-dye cotton fabric, so nice and bright, ready for summer. I've also got a contrasting fabric that I want to work in between, so every other flag, just to give it a little bit of contrast. And I've also got some plain cotton poplin. Now you can double back your bunting, you can use the main fabric as the front and the back for if you're hanging it up maybe in between posts in the garden, but for me and what I'm going to use this bunting for, it will be against a wall, so the back of the bunting won't be seen, so that's why I'm just using a contrasting plain fabric. I've also got some bias binding, so for this bunting I find it best that you use 25mm. This is because it gives you a nice wide option for when you're folding over the bunting tape when you're sewing it in. And I've just always found this the easiest. I've also got a rotary cutter. Now I find it easier to use a rotary cutter when I'm cutting out the flags, but you can use some scissors as well. And then lastly, but most importantly, is our bunting template. Now I've just cut this out using an Amazon parcel, so it doesn't have to be anything fancy. You don't have to order a template online or anything like that. What I'm going to do is put a link down below in the description for a PDF copy of a template that we've got made, and all you need to do is print that out and cut it out on either cardboard like I've done or just paper. But this is essential because you want to make sure all of your triangles are the same size and same width. So yeah, that's everything that you'll need: a template, a rotary cutter or some scissors, some bias binding, and the fabrics of your choice. So let's get on with cutting out. To cut out my bunting, now for my fabric choices I have chose to purchase 1/2 metre of each design, just so that I have enough. I just find if you get 1/2 metre of whatever designs that you want, it is a little bit easier and you've always got some left over just in case you make a mistake. So I'm just going to start off by cutting out using my rotary cutter and my template. So what I'm going to do is make sure that all of my contrasting fabrics, so my main fabric and my contrast, are right to right side with your backing fabric. So that means the right sides to right sides, so that when you sew it up down each side, at the end of that we'll be able to turn it inside out and that'll be the actual right side. So you're at your sewing machine, ready to sew. You've got your triangles right side to right side so that when they're all sewn up we can turn it inside out. You're going to sew along each edge like a triangle, so down this side and up this side, leaving the top of the triangle free because this is what we're going to put in the bias binding so that it holds it all together. So you don't need to sew the top of the bunting, just down here and up here. So I've finished sewing up all of my flags. Now when you're sewing down either side of the flag, make sure that when you get to the bottom, which is this bit here, you aren't going right to the bottom. When I first started making bunting, I used to sew right down and into this little corner here. But if you just leave a little gap so that this can be snipped off, it'll make it a lot easier when you're turning it inside out. What I'm going to do next is just go around all of the edges with my scissors. You can also use pinking shears that stop the fabric from fraying, but for now I'm just using scissors, and I'm just going to cut off any of the extra parts around the bunting, but make sure not to get too close to your thread because you don't want to make any holes when you turn it inside out. So just go around each corner and just trim it all up and trim any loose threads as well, and it just makes it a lot more neater when you come to turn it inside out. once you've trimmed all of your flags and they're nice and neat and there's no loose threads hanging about, we're now going to turn them the right way. So to do this, all you're literally going to do is just turn them inside out like that. For the point, you can either use a knitting needle to help point it through, or if you've not got any knitting needles, you can just use a pair of scissors. It's whatever works best for you, but it's just to make sure that the point kind of comes through nicely. But just don't be too firm because you don't want to poke a hole through the bottom of the point. So literally just turn it inside out, make sure all your edges are flat. Just point that through nice and slow, not too fast. And then that's one of your bunting flags done. Now once we've been through all of these and turned them the right way, we are going to head over to the ironing board and make sure that they're all nice and flat, ready for when we put the bias binding on the top. All of your bunting the right side, the right way, we're just going to iron them out. It's as simple as just flatten them out, make sure all your corners are nice and neat. And then grab your iron and just flatten them out like that. So we've ironed our bunting flags out, and next what we're going to do is grab the bias binding. If it's unfolded like this, we're going to end up folding it over with the bunting inside. So it'll look something like this. So you'll put your bunting in the centre, and then we're going to be folding it over. But you'd sew up the first half of this, and this is what's going to be hung on the wall or wherever you want your bunting to go. So this will be like the little tab that you can pin up or sellotape or whatever. So if you fold it in half like that, and then just run a stitch along there just to hold it together. When you've got a little bit at that side, you're ready to put one of your flags in. So all we're going to do is insert it in there, just in the middle of the bias binding, and at this side as well, and then just pinch it here so that we're pulling it tight and it's not going anywhere, and your flag is stuck kind of in the middle of there. If it makes it easier, you can get a glue pen and just glue the bias binding to the bunting, if that makes it a little bit easier. And then all you're going to do is literally sew along here. You're still making sure that this end of the bunting is still tucked in nicely, because as you sew, it can sometimes just drift out a little bit. So make sure it's always in there and you're pulling this part of the bunting tape quite tight to hold it in place. Once you've got to the end of the bunting and you've sewn in all of your flags, just make sure to leave a gap like at the beginning of the bunting so that it can be hung up using a pin or sellotape. So just run a stitch along there, and then when you're ready, just make a cut. And that's your bunting finished, guys. So you've got a nice long line of bunting ready to hang up in the garden or your bedroom. It's also great for nursery decor as well. So let me know in the comments how you've got on and how you found it, and yeah, thanks for watching, guys.